Alright, so here we have our glaze station. It's kind of not all the way set up yet, but we got to get this video done so that we can know how to glaze stuff. So I've got these big buckets. They are what we're going to call our mystery glazes, but they're the colors that we have, and some of these fancy new colors that I'll talk about here in just a second. So let's just talk a little bit about what glazing is. Glazing is putting kind of this shiny coating on our pots, all right? And that's basically just melted glass, all right? So if you don't put it on there, you'll just have your pots looking like this still, all right? So there's lots of different glazes. The glazes that we use are a little bit confusing because they act like paint. All right, so this one here is light blue, so it's going to be a light blue. But I have had glazes that when they came in the jar, they were this green color right here. And when we fired them, they went this fiery, shiny red. So most glazes act, they have a chemical reaction. And when I mean chemical reaction, they change chemically instead of just getting hard like this stuff is going to do. It's basically a pigment that doesn't melt and change with heat, so it's going to stay the same color, all right? So you guys can feel relatively safe that if it says it's green, it is going to be green, okay? These are some of our old colors that we used to have. I have this selection of test tiles, and the reason you do test tiles is because you want to know what things look like. So this one right here, I'm pretty sure is white or a clear. This is our mystery glaze 2 years ago, so I would imagine it's similar to that right now. This is the green that's in the big bucket that we have. So anyways, if you don't do test tiles and you get new glazes, you won't know what they're going to look like. And so that's our problem this year, is I haven't had time to make test tiles for all of my new glazes back here. It's a different brand, so I don't know if they're going to look exactly the same as this. If it says orange, it should be something similar. So we're going to check it out and go from there, all right? But you guys need to know how to glaze, all right? So the first thing is if you're looking into a bucket and it looks like this, it needs to be stirred, all right? And it's probably a little thick. Let's see. Well, on top it's a little thick. You really don't want pancake batter, all right? The thicker it is, the less time you want to keep your pottery in it. So if it's too thick, we'll add some water to it. And the way it gets thick is just like our clay, is people leave the lid off or they leave it out, and it gets dried out. So anyways, that's our glaze. And some different angles here. Hopefully you guys can still see. All right, so that works. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and use this white because it's thick for, well, we'll use it in a minute. I'm going to show you this purple over here. All right, so purple, we mixed our own purple, but this new brand that I got, I think I got some purples. So anyways, I've got this pot here. It needs some glaze on it, but I'm looking inside, there's some dust. That might affect the glaze sticking to it. So I'm going to go ahead and blow it out first, and then maybe brush it off and get any dust off that I can. Now if you add water to this, this will suck up water like a sponge. So if it gets full of water, then that's going to mess up your glazing, because when glazes go onto the pot, the water in the glaze gets sucked into the pot, and it actually helps dry your glaze quicker. So if you have a wet pot, it's going to take forever for it to dry. So you want to make sure they're fairly dry when you go to glaze them, all right? And I totally forgot a tool that we need. So just a second, I'm going to hopefully pop. All right, I don't know if I've got to edit this and stuff, but hopefully we come back in a minute. All right, so what I want to do is a two-tone pot, all right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put some glaze on the inside of this pot. All right, I've got a scoop here. All right, and I'm going to go ahead and carefully pour this glaze inside. Now I got a little drip. You can wipe that off. Some potters like to leave them because it gives it character. But you know, we'll see. All right. Now, should have the lid for your glaze in front of it, like this, so you can set down the tool on it so that when you put the lid back on, it just goes right back into your pot. All right. And you'll see I'm just going to wrap that around, or do that. I'm just going to pour it back out. Going to let that shake out a little bit. Now while I'm shaking that out and that's drying, I want you guys to notice that, or I want you to realize that if I was to shake that out over my green, I'm going to be adding purple to my green. And if I have purple in my green, then we're not going to have green or anymore. It's going to be a different color. So we need to not pollute our colors as much as possible. So I need this to dry all the way before I do the next step. So while that's drying, I'm going to do a different pot, just in the essence of time. All right. So I've got this pot. This is going to help some of you guys. Things have fallen apart for you, and let's see. Let me light here. Okay. So it fell apart. I could glue it, but then I wouldn't be able to glaze it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the glaze as a glue. Now I forgot to tell you guys the most important thing. Can't believe I didn't write a script for this again. When you glaze, you don't want glaze on the bottom. All right, maybe something like that's not going to hurt anything. But if I put glaze on the bottom and Mr. Jackson sticks it on the shelf, the glaze is going to melt to the shelf. All right. Now, if you absolutely need glaze on the bottom, you'll notice all of my pots don't have glaze on the bottom. But if you have a sculpture or something that needs glaze in a weird place, come talk to me first, because if we glaze it, I have some things that might make it work. It might not. All right. But anytime there's glaze on the bottom, I put those on the top shelf for last, because it takes so much longer to glaze, fire those, or to put them in the kiln. So I just put those last because you guys have been told not to put glaze there. And so if you really need it, come talk to me. Then yours won't be on that list because I'll know about it already. But everybody else that just lazily puts it all the way in there because they didn't watch the video or didn't pay attention, well, then you can wait, okay? And it might be, you know, the next time or whatever. But if it's got glaze on the bottom, and you can always wipe it off, all right? But if it's got glaze there, I'm not going to glaze it first. So what I'm going to do here is, like I said, I'm going to use the glaze as a glue. Now I'm going to go ahead and dip this in to my white. And because it's so thick, I really don't need to leave it in there very long. Okay. And I didn't quite get to the bottom, so hopefully, maybe I'll have to pour some into that. But when that melts together, that's going to fill in all those cracks that you could see on the edges and stuff like that. And this is really thick. The bad thing about really thick glazes is if it drips when it's melting, it could go past that line that I have there at the bottom, which might stick to the glaze or to the kiln. So that was an oopsie. So I've got that. I'm going to go ahead and paint that on now. Since I've got it open here, might as well do it. Okay, I might do some sponging on that later so that I don't have so much. Maybe I'll squeeze it off with my hands. There we go. And look at this. I'm just going to wipe it off on here. Even if you don't have gloves, I'm using gloves because Mr. Jackson's hands are totally drying out right now. And I am tired of splits in my skin. So if you have rubber gloves, go for it. I don't have those for everybody. Okay. Now, this isn't dry, but I'm going to go ahead and set it down here, all right? Now, I've got a lid that I want to be similar. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to glaze the top of it. I could even glaze around here, but if I glaze on this part too much, there's a chance that it will be too big to fit in my box again, or it also makes it hard for me to put this in the kiln because there's no place for me to set it. So the way it is right now, I can just set it in the kiln just like that, and it will fire. Okay, so so that's that. Okay, now again, we don't want to pollute our colors, but right now I'm going to wipe off my hands on something, and actually I'm just going to take these gloves off so I don't have time. Okay, I don't know how the camera is going to show this, but if you look in there, there's a little bit of shiny in there. That is okay, but if I drop, there's nothing coming out of that right now, so that's a good thing. All right, so I'm just going to leave it the way it is. Now, if I dip into another pot, it's not going to pollute the color. All right, so I've got this black one right here. It's got some sillies in it. Well, I'm going to use over here. I need to mix that in. But I'm going to go ahead and put this in here. Now, everybody's like, okay, now I'm not even worried about covering up my purple, so maybe a little bit longer. Okay, but that's pretty good. All right. Now, why wasn't I worried about the purples? I'm sure everybody's like, I know, Mr. Jackson, I know, but Mr. Jackson can't hear you right now, silly. All right, so, but if we carefully looked inside of there, why didn't the black go in there? All right, some of you guys probably know the answer, but the reason that you can do a two-tone like this, so you do the inside first, and then you let that dry, and then you can dip it into your next color, and because there's an air bubble inside of there, it won't let the glaze go into it. Now look, you can see my black glaze is already drying, and that's because the water is getting sucked into it, okay? So I've showed you guys how to do a dipping glaze. I've showed you that you can use it as a glue. That's not going to work every time. If you glue something that's off to the side, it's just going to fall down. So the best way to do that would be, I mean, if I had broken off this handle, I could just glaze it separately and then glue it on later. That would be the best fix for that, okay? So just remember that. We've got these big buckets for dipping. These little jars that we have over here are going to be for like painting designs and stuff on things. But I'm sorry, right now we don't know what color they're all going to be. I do have, you know, this shows you kind of what the orange, red, and yellow buckets over there are going to look like. They're going to be kind of this darker color of orange. They're kind of an earthy color because they're a little bit mystery, all right? Now I've got this other pot I wanted to show you guys. Something like this might happen to your pot, especially if you get grease or oil or something on there. So you want to be careful not to be getting like lotion on your hands and then going to glaze, because things like this can happen, all right? So just be careful with that. Over here, I didn't show you this before, but last thing, we have what's called a clear glaze, all right? So this clear glaze bucket, labeled clear, you can see the color that it's going to be on your pots, all right? And it's a nice green color. So if I was going to clear glaze something, the reason, especially like this one, I'm going to clear glaze this pot right here, but it's got color on it, right? So I don't know, it might get confusing when I'm trying to coat it, especially if it looks just like the color, right? So the reason they put this green into it is so that you know that when you glaze it, it's actually covered. Because if it wasn't covered, then you wouldn't be able to eat out of it and all that good stuff. So make sure that that you cover your whole project. You can use a brush later. You can, after you've glazed it with, like, this is that mystery orange, and then I got some regular orange and I just put a little bit of extra on there. And you can see there's two tones. It looks nice. It gives it a lot of variety. If you just do it the same color on the inside and the outside, it's kind of boring. But it's what it is. All right, so that is glazing in a nutshell. I hope this video works and we can watch it tomorrow. The reason I did a video is because I usually throw pots and then I do a video, or I mean I do a demo glazing those pots for you. But I did not do those wheel pots this time. So, anyways, have a good afternoon, students. Alright, maybe this will make it into the video, maybe it won't. But this big garbage can right here is our mystery glaze. It looks scary, it smells funny, but it is our mystery glaze. Alright, I think I talked about it a little while ago. This mystery glaze is basically where I put all the scraps of colors. If I have a lot of yellow scraps, I put them in the yellow. If I have orange, I put them in the orange and the red. You guys get the picture. Same with green. I don't have a blue one yet. I need to do that. The reason I keep these scraps, okay, seems a little goofy, but these glazes, I used to get them as gallons. Like, see these gallons right here? So I would get 8 gallons that costed me $480. So what's the math there? That's $60 a gallon. That's pretty expensive. So that's why I don't throw it away. And a lot of pottery labs have a mystery glaze. You'll notice that I'm putting the scoop on the lid so that all the scraps will go back into the pot when I'm done using it, because it's pretty valuable stuff, all right? So please be courteous and don't pollute the glazes, because if you pollute the glazes, then we don't have an idea of what colors we have. Just be careful. If you dropped a pot in this big thing of white, just reach in there and grab it, and then just squeegee your arm off as much as you can and your project, and then it won't be a big deal, okay? I'm trying to get some smaller buckets for up here, because these big ones, we have it, but they're kind of hard to work with, but they're what we got right now. So anyways, I hope that is it. Remember, there will be tools for each color. Don't just grab a spoon or something like that. Try and use the one you can tell has white glaze on it or whatever color that you're working with, okay? So, again, I'm going to say goodbye again, and I hope that doesn't sound too dorky on the video, but I'm sure it already does. Thank you, students, and have a good afternoon.